Hi, I'm Dr. Stan Steindl, and welcome back to Compassion in a T-shirt. Today we're exploring a topic that sits right at the heart of motivational interviewing, but perhaps doesn't get spoken about enough directly. Hope. My guest is Dr. Denise Ernst, psychologist, trainer, and longtime member of the motivational interviewing community, whose recent workshop explored what it means to cultivate hope in MI practice. In this conversation, we explore the idea that hope isn't something we install into people, but something we help call forth, something already there, even in moments of despair or self-doubt. We talk about deep listening, the fixing reflex, change talk and hope talk, the role of compassion and self-compassion, and what it means for practitioners to stay connected to their own wellspring of hope while sitting alongside suffering every day. This was a thoughtful and deeply human conversation, and one that I think reaches beyond therapy into how we relate to ourselves, each other, and the world. And so I bring you Dr. Denise Ernst. Dr. Denise Ernst, welcome to Compassion in a T-shirt.
I want one of the t-shirts.
Yes, I'm wearing mine, of course.
I know, I see.
Yeah. But we recently sort of presented alongside each other. We did that presentation. There was a few topics: compassion and psychological safety, but also hope. And so, yes, I was excited to get to chat to you and maybe just sort of drill down into this idea of hope. How do you understand hope?
Well, what I've come to in terms of my digging down and which, by the way, is just a gift of being retired, that I actually have the time to take a deeper dive. And of course, it has been helpful that Bill Miller has written a lot about hope, and I've had several conversations with him about it in relationship to motivational interviewing. But where I've kind of come to is that hope is in the way that we would like to think about it for this. There's a lot of different definitions of hope, and if you look at Bill's book about 8 ways to hope, there's all kinds of activities and things that you can do to begin to activate or engage hope. But I actually think about it as a sort of a living energy, and a that it resides alongside things like love and compassion and empathy, those that are actually energetic forces, if you will. And that, there's work that's been done that looks at that exchange at that level of energy. It can actually have physiologic changes on people. So if you're talking to someone, I'm going to really misrepresent all of this stuff, but if you're talking to someone that actually with intention, you can come to things like heart rate. Your heart rates come together and operate together. So when I think about hope and what we're doing in motivational interviewing, I really think about it at that's what we're activating in ourselves and in reaching towards others. That it is because it is an energy that we don't know how to measure. We don't understand how to measure, like we don't understand how to measure love. We can't measure it. We all know it's real. We all know it's there. And we all experience those things. And it's something more that helping people experience hope inside their bodies and inside their relationship, is what I'm thinking of. So it's not like I really hope that I get this final outcome that's out there that I want. There are certainly ways of looking at it that way, but in terms of the underlying what's at work that we're hoping to activate and create and draw forth, if you will. That's how I think of it.
Mm. Yeah, sort of an energy within us, an energy through which we might then engage with the world or bring it with us as we engage with the world, and then something interactional as well, I suppose, with the energy of hope in another person. And I noticed you
That's right.
said draw forth there. Tell us about that bit of it then, drawing forth hope, I suppose, in another
Right.
person.
Well, of course, where I started with that was that that's the definition in the book, is that it is it hope is not it's not about creating hope or trying to put hope in someone. It's about calling forth that which is already there. So my thinking on that, not just mine, but I place that hope in the same sort of seed pod as all what Rogers called that drive towards wholeness. Like inside every individual is, or everything really, is that hope is part of that seed. And I think of it maybe as even the fuel of that drive to become our full potential, to become fully human, to grow, for the tree to grow into a whole tree. It's like and it's hidden in there. It's sort of in there, and as you can tell, for many people in the world, it never gets activated. They don't reach their potential. They don't grow. I don't know why. We don't know the answer to those kind of questions, but I do really think that that's where it resides. It's just it's part of our humanness that is there. So when we're calling forth, that's what we're attempting to do. Just like when we're working in client-centered mode, where we are trying to create the conditions that allow the person's own internal drive towards wholeness to move, to get activated, to take steps, to move in that direction, to recognize, to envision their wholeness, to begin to grow. Um, so I think it lies there,
Mm.
and that's what calling forth is about: is setting the conditions to that a person's hope can be nourished.
It's a sort of an optimistic or hopeful way to conceptualize it, that hope is there. It's the seeds are planted, and sometimes people can really find it difficult, perhaps through just personal experiences, I guess, or things that happen in their lives that sort of shapes all of that. And sometimes hope is more dormant rather than what we're
Yes.
wanting to do, which is to, uh, yeah, really try to water the seeds of hope or something, and that it can actually be called forth or cultivated, and then that becomes I like that idea too. It becomes an energetic part of this kind of the self-actualization sort of idea, that if
Mhm.
we feel hopeful and can cultivate that, then that just aids in our ability to move forward.
And you look at the and people in our line of work have experienced that too, that it is dormant in so many people, and part of that is what we pay attention to. So part of our learning, and that certainly is one of the learning things that I've learned through my MI skills, but is what we pay attention to. So typically, people will pay more attention to the agitating things that are there, and the problem or whatever it is and individuals do that with themselves as well as with others.
If sometimes we can be really sort of caught deep in our threat system, and that forces
Yes.
our attention, or kind of takes our attention onto the negatives, the dangers, and the things that could go wrong. Whereas hope is an attentional shift.
It is, and trauma functions the same way as the sort of threat system. The sort of owning of the traumatization and being in that, I mean, being sort of caught in that sense of trauma. But you do hear and see, and I'm assuming you will have experienced this too, that we aren't, even when people can be deeply buried in that stuff, that they can experience a shift. They can and do. It's not locked up forever to never be there. It is that there, things happen in people's lives where they make a complete 180 and they just go, oh, I'm going to go in a different direction. And they have moments of awakening. They have moments of insight. They have moments when they experience something beyond where they were, and they're ready to turn towards it. And it may not ever look like that's going to happen from what went on right before that. It's like it may look completely locked up and boxed up, but there is always that potential.
Mm. And it's interesting because you emphasize that it's difficult for us to offer hope or even call forth the hope in another unless we're sort of in touch with our own. That there's because even that concept you just described, it's a hopeful concept. It's this idea that people can shift, on these sort of things. So what does it look like there in terms of a practitioner discovering, cultivating their own wellspring of hope?
Well, I mean, what I've learned because I've been doing workshops in this since 2019 on the first ones, and that what the most important thing that people usually walk away from is the time they've actually spent thinking, reflecting on their own hope, and 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 remembering or experiencing or putting themselves, really deeply getting to know and and think about what does give them hope. Because again, people get caught in the fast paced, moving forward, and it's about the other person, and I mean, we do that easily. And so that spending time really, really reflecting on your own sense of hope, and basically doing the same kind of thing that you would do with a client for yourself, like what gives me hope, what is it that I think of as hopeful, and almost, when do I experience that overwhelming sense of joy, or you know I mean, I know for me, like when I am looking at this maple tree outside, that watching it over time, it gives me tremendous amount of hope, because it activates that sense, because it's so incredibly beautiful and it's so consistent and it keeps coming, and it flows through and it dies and it comes back, and the whole, and it just keeps on doing its work. It is, there's just a sense of beauty in that. So everyone is activated by different things, and if you think about this in terms of energy, then every people have different pathways into their own, and they just need to understand what is it that is, um what is it inside that really is, that does give me hope. When do I notice it? So you're paying attention to that, and recognizing that in order to be able to do any of the things that we want to do in terms of conveying that energy or putting it out, we have to, it has to be there. I mean, you know, it's like we've said about empathy all along, the same kind of thing. Like, if it's not about feeling empathic, it's about being able to express empathy. And that's why the motivational interviewing skills are so important because we learn how to not just think, "Oh, I'm a good listener and I feel I have a lot of empathy." It's it's not until the client receives that and understands that and and hears it that it becomes therapeutic. And it's the same thing with hope, I think.
Yeah, yes, you're sort of what you're saying and the little questions you posed. I mean, that really got me thinking and reflecting, and I do feel that in some ways I was a more hopeful person as a younger person than maybe I sometimes feel today, and I do wonder about that. I think it's a little bit to do with loss, actually, in a way that the last few years there's been quite a lot of loss. COVID, I guess, was a bit of a beginning of that, and then just personal losses along the way, and so it's something that we, I guess, discover and then rediscover, and it does take this concerted effort to remain connected with this feeling of hope, and finding those ways, the sort of in nature, as you say, or other experiences, or in sort of the good news stories of humanity, or whatever, but almost sort of meditating on hope, and actively sort of kind of reminding and discovering and rediscovering, and it's an ongoing process a little bit, as life unfolds.
It's a practice. In Bill's book, Loving Kindness, he talks about all the different aspects, which I think hope is, and it is in his book there, but it's a part of that. They're all practices. It is an intentional practice, and people have different ways of doing it. I mean, I have yoga and I have meditation that I do regularly, and there's several things that I do, including just the stuff like this that are
Mm,
part of my hope practice, and
mm.
that it's paying attention to that and actively um, looking for the hope in everywhere, making the coming to that belief that it is. I mean, that, when we talk about when Carl Rogers, we talk about that in training, about how, believing in that people really do have within them, that desire, and that desire to grow, and the desire for wholeness, they have it inside of them. That is hugely powerful, and even conveying that, and that also means that we have it, and it's in everybody. And so deepening that sense, what does it really mean to believe that? It's one thing to say, oh yeah, I think everybody has it in them. It's another thing altogether to sort of embody that belief and be able to convey that belief, because just holding that belief is very powerful.
Yes, and I wonder whether that human experience of hope being hard, hope taking hits, hope being built back up again, like that that also knowing that hope is in there, it's a part of who we are, it's the seeds are there and we can cultivate it, and knowing that it's hard and it can come and go sometimes and it's difficult to maintain, but both of those things create a sort of a bridge to others who are, kind of grappling with these same sorts of things, I suppose. I mean, hope's not easy. If you just think of the word hope, it sounds lovely, but when you really drill down, it's a deeply embedded thing that's also, takes practice, takes work, fluctuates as time goes on, but can be nourished and can be, towards human flourishing.
Yeah, and you think, I mean, this is one of the reasons, because just of the nature that you're talking about is one of the reasons I think that motivational interviewing is so poised and positioned to be able to help do this in the world, because we are trained in being able to hold together that paradox of, this is, there's yes, there's hope, and look at all this, and be able to hold that, and the ambivalence about it, and the ups and downs, and it's like it's all okay, it's all a part of the process. And we practice a long time to be able to hold all those things in equanimity. I mean, and that's a really important, that's a really important thing, to just know that, yeah, it is going to fluctuate, and that's okay, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, no, definitely. In what ways do the core elements of the MI spirit, partnership, acceptance, compassion, empowerment, how might they help to create the conditions for hope to emerge in the therapeutic relationship, but perhaps in the person we're working with?
I think uh, um, the real way, the underlying way that it happens is in the deeper listening. And so
Gotcha.
the you're of being, having the intention of really understanding and making that connection, which is, empathy is about, of really understanding at a deep level where the person is. And so the elements of the spirit, all, I mean, it's like the listening supports all of them, and they're different ways of expressing it. So being able to convey partnership, and to talk about collaboration, and to actively collaborate, that it requires that listening, and it also demonstrates the willingness to be connected, and to work together, which is also part of that. It's like, it's a way that you can convey hope, is by saying, hey, I'm here, and I'm going to work with you, and we'll work till we find something, or, I mean, I'll be here, and I'm here in service of you for this. And that in itself, even offering that, is a way of conveying hope. It implies so much more, especially when you undergird it with the listening skills. And the same goes for compassion and empowerment, that we have ways of both explicitly conveying those things, and energetically conveying those things, and sort of trusting that through that space, that when we're in that deep listening mode, we are really in a receptive mode. And that if we're really tuning in, we're receiving from the client, we're really encouraging that reception, and we're taking that reception, and we're actively moving it back. It's like we're listening for, and connecting, and that is a more energetic process. But all of the ways in which the spirit, or the skills themselves operate, are based on that energy going underneath.
Hmm. And sometimes the energy sounds like it's sort of expressed in tonal ways, or through tone and even facial expression, body posture, the way that we're enacting the spirit, or the way that we're practicing the skills is as important for conveying hope as sort of literally sort of saying I am hopeful or something.
Right.
There's a sort of
Right.
that's the energy that gets conveyed and felt, I suppose. You've
Yeah.
talked about hope talk. I mean, we have change talk and so on in motivational interviewing, and we're listening for change talk and so on. But Yeah, listening for hope talk as well. This is the deep listening, and yes, but what are we listening for really in clients that might signal hope or these little seeds of hope, and how might we respond to, gently strengthen that?
Well, the a couple of things. One, what you just said about
Mm,
the non more nonverbal stuff about it. That in my you know thinking about it, that the responses, the more um, embodied nonverbal responses to the person, of just the presence, being present and being there. So sort of like anything can spark hope, or a discussion of hope for the person, and that being being present and conveying that. You can tell the difference when you're talking to somebody with, if they're thinking in their head about, let's see, what is the next thing I should say, whether what is that I'm going to do, or whether or not they're open and saying, uh, saying, talk to me.
yeah.
So that those are really an important part of what we're listening for. It's sort of like, I think about assuming that everything that a person says is contains a seed of hope. Everything. And I'm listening for that. I'm going to tend to that, and I'm going to listen to that, and it starts with that receptive body. Now, I've had a few conversations with Bill about this too, about Hope Talk, which after our the thing we all did together. And he was talking about relating it to his book, and about that, things like desire, elements of change talk, certain elements of change talk can certainly contain hope talk. But I also think it goes way beyond that. That there are, again, that there are elements in all kinds of, when people talk about their, and really think through their values and what's important to them, and why, and how their relationships nourish them. And because all of those things have the capacity to build hope, that and to allow the person to express their own hope, if they, and to tap into it. So when they're, it's almost like any deeper self-exploration, which I know you were also interested in, but any deeper self-exploration has that, it provides that opportunity. I just think that if we as the practitioner tune ourselves and attend to, and just, because you can feel it. When you're really tuned into somebody, this, you're tuned into somebody, and you're receiving from them. You witness the sort of, if they have a spark, or that they get the way they say something, or their tone, or the look in their eye, or any of those things, you can pick up on, and match, and explore further. So it's sort of like, I think about Hope Talk being a present, that it's potential Hope Talk being present everywhere. Um, it's training ourselves to listen for, and because everybody's different too, what it is that really uh, gives them hope, or what they put, where they place their hope. I mean, you know, people place hope in things, and then they think, well, they didn't get what they wanted, so it didn't work, or whatever. It's a hopeless situation. But if you just sort of explore all around there, and um, it bubbles up.
Yeah. It's sort of like if we listen with hope, then we
Mhm.
can listen for hope. And it's sort of, again, it's that energetic within and between that you're
Yes.
describing there. Because I can sort of, yeah, I imagine like a practitioner might say, so, what is really important for you at the moment? What sort of life would you really want to lead? And then the person actually sort of thinks, well, this is really important to me. Boom, we're into the world of hope, really, actually, because it's about sort of imagining or sort of the possibilities of things, and now we're sort of working in hope. What do you think about the delicate nature of that sort of an exchange where is it possible for the practitioner to come in too strong with hope and then it elicits a kind of an unhopeful talk?
Well, sure. Just like, I can remember the early on in my motivational interviewing training, when we were really talking, focused on change talk. And I guess it wasn't early on, it was later. But um, because we didn't have change talk to start with. But um, the concept of don't jump on that. The person says one piece of change talk and you go, it's like, and you're gonna get a backfire. You're gonna get a backfire. And I mean, I think the same is true with virtually anything. If you if you get into that sort of persuasive mode where, oh, look, see, that's hopeful. Oh yeah, you should feel hope about that, where driven by our own internal state to try to force it, it's going to backfire. So um, if you stay in that just being present and this is where actually learning the fixing reflex is something that another reason why I think motivational interviewing is so well positioned for this work, because learning to recognize, oh, I want to do something. I want this to be different. I want to do something about it. I think I have an idea about what it should be, and I'm going to jump in. And learning to tame that and say, oh, there it is. I don't have to act on that, is incredibly powerful. Because even if you jump in, you can always back out and say, you know what? This is not mine. That what we're here is what's important to you. This, uh, you know,
Mm.
and so that process of really learning how to identify when your own self is getting in the way.
Mm. Yeah, it's just thinking about it. It's being able to slow down, listen, be patient, let it come, stay evocative, not slip into a more fixing reflex. That is a hopeful place to be too, in a way, because it does believe in something to emerge, that things will emerge, and whereas the fixing reflex is kind of coming from a place of enthusiasm maybe, but it's also coming from a place of sort of an anxious place where what if things don't change, and so, oh, that's something that might help them change, I'll jump on that. And but to sort of slow that down is itself really energetically a hopeful thing.
Yes. And I think we can trust that this sort of that energetic, keeping the equanimity in the in the energy, that sort of energetic flow will be picked up. I mean, I really believe, I mean, it's these are the kinds of things that um we know happen by our own experience. You can feel when someone is urgently trying to uh, change your mind about something, or they don't even have to speak it in persuasive language. You can tell when someone is trying to do that. You can feel it. And by the same token, if somebody just says you can feel when somebody is there with you, you and even if the person isn't making the connection with that, they're still feeling it.
Mm.
I think we can trust that.
Yeah. Yes, I've been really pondering and practicing equanimity lately because it does feel like it creates a really stable ground for lots of things. I interviewed Margaret Cullen for this channel, and she's recently published a book, Quiet Strength, which it was quite a great, yeah, it was a great book on the topic. But yes, in
Podcast with her.
what's that? Sorry.
I just listened to a podcast with her.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes, and it's so yeah, that sort of that calmness and composure and balance and groundedness. And then, well, I've been thinking about that from the point of view of we then can build compassion upon that too. But it's sort of hope as well, and yeah. What about compassion? You did mention that at the start. You sort of talked about, hope is a little bit like love or a little bit like compassion. Do you see them as uh, adjacent things or sort of separate things? Is there some sort of interaction or connection there? That I guess if we think of hope in a way, sort of lends itself to compassion that perhaps suffering can be alleviated or prevented, I suppose, and things can change. But yes, what are your thoughts about the relationships and interrelationships there?
Well, what came into my mind right now is sort of the idea of a prism, and
Okay.
that it's sort of like the overarching energy, the life force, love, however you want to call it, but that it's like it gets refracted, and
Ah,
all of these things that we're talking about, compassion and hope and and empathy, and there's so many. It's like the colors of the rainbow. They're all aspects of that overarching goodness that's coming out of that prism. I don't know how to. I mean, it's like there's that force that is present,
uh-huh.
and aspects of that. Um, and and really, you know, I mean, words are really we're really limited in our words for this kind of stuff. It's like because it doesn't fall in our the language we've developed about things that we can measure, and I think about like with compassion, about Terry Moyers in her discussion when we were talking about the motivational interviewing treatment integrity code, and she's like, there is no way we're going to measure compassion over my dead body, because there is no way there from the limited viewpoint of what we know how to measure, that we aren't going to be able to, it won't even begin to capture it. And so and she's always said the things that are the most important are things that we don't know how to measure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Measure things that are, that they're helpful. It's useful to measure how much reflective listening you're doing and blah blah blah. But you know the
Mm.
the really important things that we barely have words for, and they're more experience. And I guess that's what I hope for people when I do the workshops and stuff. I want people to experience physically in their body, experience that. And compassion is like that too. It's like an experience when you when you witness somebody, when you're there and somebody's suffering, and what you feel in your body that you want, that you would do to alleviate it. I mean, it's like very powerful, and it sort of defies our abilities with our language.
Yes, it does. I really quite, I very much like the prism and that metaphor or concept, though. I love that because I do grapple sometimes with, you know, compassion and love, or, kind of compassion versus kindness, or, and where hope might sit alongside it all, and, all that sort of stuff. But if you think of it as a kind of an overarching goodness that we might call sort of love, I mean, maybe John Lennon was right, all you need is love, really. But then it kind of sorry, what was the word? Refracts or
When you have a
prism?
light or a crystal or something, it refracts the
Refracts. Yes.
you get refracted.
Yeah. Yeah, and out
Yeah.
comes these different things, and compassion and kindness maybe are a bit different in a way. Compassion might be much more focused on suffering and alleviating suffering. Kindness is more just doing things for the benefit of others, and so on and so forth. But these are all kind of, yeah, refracted kind of light beams coming out of this overarching. I really, yeah, I'll meditate over that. I think that's a lovely way to think about it. Mm.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, probably, I'm not sure it really matters to differentiate to the detail about how they might be alike or differ. They have so many different expressions, but it's like expressions of the same. In a way, it's like expressions of the same thing, because and sometimes it might come out looking more like we think of kindness, and sometimes more like compassion, and sometimes more like hope, or but but it's sort of like that, that just allowing the that energy to
Mm.
come.
Mm.
And that's another thing about motivational interviewing. For me, and I have said this since the beginning of learning motivational interviewing, very early on, which has been a long time now for me. Um, but I can't believe it's been like 36 years. But
36 years.
I
Okay.
learned it, yep. And but that,
1990, are we? Is that 1990?
well,
Have I
yeah,
done my maths right?
well, yeah, I mean, I didn't do my TNT till later, but we were doing a research project in one of the first ones in motivational interviewing. Actually, I think it was 91, because the book had come out.
Yes.
Um, as we learned through the book.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
I have always really felt like, um, this motivational interviewing, it is uh, one of those refracted lights that
Yes.
contains several of them, and that it was never about me, and it was never about my skill level. It was never about my, I mean, maybe I was gifted with the opportunity and the capacity to teach, but it was about letting it do it through me. It was not mine, and it was very clear from the very beginning that it was not me. And I can remember teaching and working with people and learning how to listen and say, you do have to practice your way into it, but you will get where you realize that you do not have to think about this at all. You allow that energy to go back and forth, and you will receive everything you need from the client to reflect. That it is an allowing of it to work, which all those things like getting out of the way, not working with trying to get out of the fixing reflex, all of those things help us open up the pathway so that it can work. Um, and I mean, I've just felt that from the very beginning. Like it was bigger than me. It was so much bigger than me. It wasn't about me.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I
And
mean,
so
and Bill and I had that conversation. He's like, it's bigger than Bill. It's not, and
that's right. No, I think that is a felt sense one gets when first connecting or experiencing motivational interviewing is that we're sort of it's a just a very human thing that
yes,
exists, within us and between us, and we channel it and we do it, and we can hone it and practice it and become, sort of as effective as we can, and also it then becomes a little bit more just natural and automatic. But
right.
it does, I can really relate to what you're saying, and somewhere in there there's self-compassion too, isn't there, for the practitioner, being able to recognize that and kind of have that sense of their own well-being in that, and where their responsibilities lie, and various other aspects whereby the self-compassion or self-care of the practitioner fits in too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel the same way about compassion as I do hope that if you don't, you can't have what you don't, I mean, you can't give what you don't have. And if you don't have, if you don't offer yourself the same level, if you feel, if you walk around feeling unworthy, you're not good enough. I mean, that's what you're going to convey. It's like that being able to have compassion with yourself, that we're all just human, and of course we're going to feel hopeless, and we're going to feel bad, and we're going to feel good, and we're going to feel all those things. It's all a part of life, and I think accepting that humanness and not and having compassion for yourself is really important to being able to extend compassion,
Mm, mm,
um, in a very meaningful way, in a very deep way. Um, the way we can operate on the surface and give give people and say, oh, I'm going to try to alleviate this suffering over here. But in a very deep way, it's like understanding your own suffering and understanding how so much that's just so much a part of the human condition, that we all suffer. I mean, and we all deserve compassion. I mean,
yes.
it's like, um,
Mm, yeah. Not wanting to spring a bad, oh, sorry, not bad, but a big question on you, although I'm about to. But I mean, it is. We reflected before we started recording that there's a lot going on in the world, and the people, it's stressful, and people can get a little bit hooked by despair or hopelessness. I'm not sure. I mean, there's always been difficult things happening in the world, I suppose, in a way, and so that's but yeah, how can what would you say to those who are just kind of feeling some of that? How might one lend hope, or sort of give a little takeaway for people to reflect on?
well, in the same way we were just talking about self-compassion. I mean, I think knowing your own sense of hopelessness, knowing your own sense of despair, understanding it, not not trying to uh, minimize it, or just to accept it, that also is part of the human condition, that we are going to experience that, um, and being able to sort of hold both. And this is another really important motivational interviewing thing, being able to hold that both can be true. There can be hope and hopelessness, or a feeling of hopelessness.
Mm.
That both can be true. And the practice has to do with being able to bring in both, and to be able to not throw out one or deny one, but to be able to turn, to be able to turn toward the hope, to be able to turn attention, to turn, whether it's with the other person or yourself. And
Mm.
that it takes a lot of practice to do that. And practices for me are um, what really are the key of ongoing regular practices that are designed to really allow that energy to flow. And that in whatever way people do it, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and a lot of different avenues that you can do it through, but finding the ways that give you the opportunity to turn and be and to practice that. And of course, you're never going to do it perfectly. But if you think about I mean, despair is one thing, and hopelessness, I mean, in some ways, if we think of hope as they're always there inside, covered up, buried, you know, encased or whatever, but that there really isn't hopelessness. It's like
Hmm.
we can't. Despair is very real. Like it feels like there's no access to the hope. But in a sense, if I think about that, like, okay, I may feel hopeless, but I I do trust that it's there, and at least helps me think about it a little differently. And even with the other person too, if somebody's feeling, and you can't deny that somebody's despairing, of course, but that comes to that attention too, of like, okay, things are really bad and the world is, a mess. So let's put that aside for a second and look where things aren't a mess. Where is your life not a mess? And it may take a long, depending on the situation, could take a lot of digging to find something that wasn't a mess. But it's that being able to not deny the despair, not try to convince them they shouldn't have it, but to actually, you're trying to help people be able to hold that, like that, to develop that sense of equanimity of like, okay, that trusting that there is a whole lot of goodness out there, and it's not all hopeless. There's a lot of goodness, and how can I go about trying to find some of it? Trying to pay attention to it.
Love it. I think that that's a great place to end. I've been reading romantic comedies this year because that's one way to try. There's often very deep themes in a
Yes.
rom-com, but there's also triumph and of course the happy ending. But yeah, Dr. Denise Ernst, yeah, thank you for spreading the word and keeping hope alive. I think I know that this is something that you've really dedicated yourself to these days, so I really appreciate that. And also thank you for speaking with me on compassion in a t-shirt.
Oh, I really appreciate being here, Stan. I love any time I have to talk with you and to explore these ideas. It's great. So I
Wonderful.
appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.